So, I feel like the crux of the James Lindsay hate is that he's treated like a trans activist. The only difference is that instead of claiming he identifies as whatever he wants, if you can believe it, he flips it on its head and he claims the woke right is whatever James wants it to be. If you ask a trans person to explain gender, they may go into a long, self-indulgent diatribe about what their gender means to them. What does James do? Goes into an almost 6,000 word description of what the woke right is, which is pretty embarrassing because the Constitution is only 4,500 words, which is pretty impressive that they could build an entire country off of those 4,500 words, but after James' 6,000 words, still no one knows what the fuck he's talking about. You might think that's descriptive. Well, whatever his ever-changing gender definition of the woke right is, it never maps onto reality to whoever he accuses of being woke right. James Lindsay is trying to queer the right, and so what does one do when one queers? They avoid any and all debate, they create their own insular echo chamber, they're highly antagonistic and petulant toward people that disagree with them, and finally, they only associate with people that fully are on board with their delusion. So let's hop into our skimpy little birthday suits and dive into a conversation between Jordan Peterson and Matt Walsh. Despite James Lindsay's antagonization to Matt Walsh, Jordan Peterson, holding James very near and queer to his heart, can't understand why Matt Walsh just won't talk to James Lindsay.
Have you thought about talking to Lindsay? I mean, I've found James... You can have a conversation with James, you know, and...
Yeah, Jordan, you didn't exactly push back or criticize anything James was saying. You can also have a conversation with a schizophrenic as long as you also act like the little man on the radio is talking. You can have a conversation with a 9-year-old, and it goes perfectly well if you just placate their delusions the entire time. Yeah, I don't think you're making the point you think you're making there.
And, you know, there's all this oppression in society. We're going to liberate people from oppression and everything's going to be utopia. That's Marcuse in a nutshell. Okay?
Defined primarily by full sexual liberation.
Of course.
Right?
And
you know, there is...
Hold on.
Oh,
it all goes to hell. And so then the right wakes up, woke. And so
to talk about this Lucifer idea. So Lucifer is the morning star and he's the angel of the untrammeled intellect. That's how he's portrayed in Milton, right? And he's allied in some strange way with the serpent in the Garden of Eden.
if I might just interject, if he's the morning star, what do you do in the morning after the morning star rises? You wake up.
Right.
Woke.
Right.
Let's see how Matt Walsh delicately tries to describe the problem to Jordan Peterson, which is how vitriolic and immature and petulant and juvenile James Lindsay is on social media.
The problem is that as this conversation started on X, like we can disagree. I got no issue with that. And this is an issue where there's a rational argument on either side. I do think that there's a right argument, but the problem is that James Lindsay, you know, his response was at first dismissive, and then eventually he offers this kind of lengthy semi-rebuttal of part of my argument. But then at the end of it, he says that I'm a fool and a dimwit. And so, you know, once you say that, then it's not possible to have a conversation anymore.
No, wait a sec.
Thank you, Jordan. Before you wash James's dick hole, let me show the examples far beyond what you're even going to let Matt Walsh say. On May 6th, Matt Walsh responds to James Lindsay by saying, "You didn't have to call me a fool and a midwit. You could have just left out all this ad hominem stuff and criticized my ideas." To which James Lindsay responds, "You're a midwit, Matt." May 14th, James Lindsay says, "I'm over here just trying to help Matt and people are mad at me for it." Pretty antagonizing, don't you think? May 15th, someone says, "You owe Matt an apology." James Lindsay says, "Matt? No, I don't." May 15th, in response to someone suggesting that James Lindsay is using the woke right label a little too broadly, James says, "Obviously I could be using it too broadly, and obviously there are edge cases and degrees of going woke, just like on the left. There's also a lot of elite capture by woke and people who themselves aren't really even leaning woke, but kinda mimic it and give it a pass it shouldn't get." Cough, Matt Walsh. And then on May 16th, we have James Lindsay saying Matt is a lot of things, discerning isn't one of them, and one of his lackeys says, "He's a bit of a rake stepper, lol." James replies with, "He can step on a rake in an empty field." So let's listen to world-renowned psychologist Jordan Peterson explain to Matt Walsh why he should talk to this person. You know, if he had a client that was going through some issues with somebody and they were being toxic, I would assume he would go, oh yeah, you should probably not talk to that person because of how toxic they're being. But there's something different about James Lindsay. Let's hear what Jordan has to say.
I don't know, Matt, about that. I mean, because I've been in the thick of so many political arguments, I've had moments of pretty severe dislocation, even with friends, you know, and one of the things I've learned is that, and I'm not trying to lecture you at all, but one of the things I've learned is that, you know, a month of reconsideration and then what would you say, taking the opportunity to actually talk, that's pretty useful, to take a longer view, you know, because people can be stupid. People are stupid in the moment. And the things that James said about you obviously don't seem to be productive, but it would be good, you know, if the conservative side of things could model a bit more wise, sober second thought, you know? And I like James, and I've had productive conversations with him, and he's a force for good, all things considered. And I would say the same thing about you. And it'd be unfortunate to see unnecessary fractures in a side that's already pushed pretty hard to the wall, you know? So anyways, that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, Matt. The fracture on the right isn't James Lindsay picking at you and antagonizing you and being like a child and calling you names and passively aggressively demeaning you. That's not causing a fracture. What would cause a fracture is you not giving him the time of day to talk about him, even though he refuses to apologize for anything he said about you. Jordan Peterson is playing into some really unhealthy toxicity. Can we all agree on that? And he should be among the first people to be able to acknowledge this toxicity, but he seems to be sweeping for it, and that's concerning, and that's gonna lead to someone needing a wellness check, because people that need a wellness check are only gonna keep people around that will placate their delusions. And Jordan Peterson is among the largest voices in clinical psychology, and he's like, yeah, I don't see anything wrong with James's mental capacity at all. He seems like a completely regular, nice, normal guy. It's kind of creepy. It's weird. Let's explore.
And you can think that I'm a fool and a dimwit. Maybe I am, maybe I am. But if that's your view of it, then it's hard to have a productive conversation, because you're going into it saying, well, I don't take your ideas seriously. So then, okay, well, I don't know how I can offer my ideas to you if you don't take them seriously. I'm not sure how we can have a conversation. But if you were to, it doesn't mean that a conversation is not possible. And I do think that there's certainly a conversation here worth having, not just about the Shiloh Hendricks case itself, but I know that, James Lindsay has been, and others have been on kind of this crusade recently about what they call the woke right. And I think that there's a discussion to be had there too, because I think that, my take on it is, I think the label is at a minimum not useful at all. It's not a useful label. Nobody can really even explain what it is exactly. There are, I've asked people over the last week, what does this even mean? I've gotten 10 different answers, which tells you, that's what tells you that you've come up with a term or a label that's not useful, is when no one is very clear on what it actually is.
So we have Jordan Peterson from the above making James Lindsay seem like an amicable, reasonable interlocutor for discourse and discussion, while down below, James Lindsay gets to antagonize incessantly. Seems kinda suspicious. Seems kinda astroturfy. Seems like running cover for James Lindsay. That's what it seems like. Because how else could the world's greatest clinical psychologist, support such toxic behavior? But Matt's right. James Lindsay is going on a world tour talking about the woke right. And let's explore as to whether or not this seems astroturfed or not. Yeah, okay? Yeah, alright. I first noticed this with Douglas Murray. The people that were defending him, like this guy saying Douglas Murray is a smart, muscular, alpha gay man. And then I look at his content on YouTube, and the guy has a video with 6.8 thousand views and 0 comments. Ain't that weird? With my newfound heightened sense of astroturfery, I found these guys who have a high production value. You can see that they have a set, looks like there's money behind them, and they say the woke right exists, and they call out Elijah Schaffer, Mike Cernovich, Tim Pool, Dave Smith, and they're like, you're wrong, the woke right really does exist. There's not a gun to our head. This is what we really think. And then I look at their YouTube channel. They have 20.5 thousand subs, and their video discussing the woke right has 11 views in 3 days. Even their live videos from 5 months ago have 14 views. What are these accounts? These are the people that are supporting James Lindsay and screaming his praises. And they have these completely fake social media presences. I've shown you James Lindsay on trigonometry. I've shown you James Lindsay on Jordan Peterson's show, which he has like over 8 million subscribers on YouTube. Now what I'm going to show you is something I've been trying to not show anybody because it's so bad. Let's run through some of the lesser known shows that James is traveling the world to go on with the most pathetic view counts. I don't know what the point of this is. This is going to be me trying to process how this grift is not so obviously visible to so many people. Let's get into it. Here's James Lindsay traveling to New Zealand 2 weeks ago, and it has 93 views on a channel that has 294 subscribers, and he's talking to a trade union in New Zealand about free speech. Like he's paid to be there. None of what he's doing is generating any revenue on its own merits, which is a huge red flag for being astroturfed.
The fancy academic literature calls this structural determinism. The structure of society itself determines who you are and how you will see the world. And you can wake up to that fact and have a critical consciousness, a critical race consciousness maybe, or you can stay asleep to that fact and you can have a false consciousness, and therefore your opinion doesn't matter. So maybe here on your islands, you're the wrong kind of Maori if you speak up the wrong way.
So while still in New Zealand, he goes on a show that has 49 subscribers. It got 2.2 thousand views and it's from a month ago. Listen to this guy's voice. And of course he's going to New Zealand where even their liberals or right-wingers are way further left than the United States. It's odd that he would travel so far to talk to these no-name people and get no eyeballs on it globally. But really just go there to talk to him and be like, hey, you guys like what I said 10 years ago? You want to hear that again?
I'm here this afternoon at the offices of MediaWorks with my guest today is Dr. James Lindsay, who's written an excellent book called Cynical Theories on a Tour of New Zealand. Dr. James Lindsay, thanks for coming along.
Hey, thank you for having me.
We had you this morning talking, you gave a speech to one of our functions and you spoke about a number of topics, but today I want to narrow down on this book, Cynical Theories. Critical theories crossed out as cynical theories. I learnt a lot from this book.
Well, James, I think your book is the best, and you've been a wonderful guest.
Oh, I would pay $500 for a pill that could make me sound like this guy. What a voice. But we're gonna dig our dicks a little more into this next one because the guy actually gives him pushback, and he's like, James, give me some names. What are you talking about? You're talking about Orrin McIntyre and how he's like the epitome of woke right. I've had him on here. I agreed with pretty much everything he said, so I'm not seeing it. Listen to how hard this guy tries to get it.
For example, I think one of my primary antagonists is a character that operates at The Blaze, which was formerly owned and controlled by Glenn Beck, but no longer since he retired. And that character's name is Orrin McIntyre. I think he is a very clear articulation of what I'm talking about. So
okay, now let me just say this is why I find this fascinating, because Orrin McIntyre has been on this program many times over the last 3 years, I think, and he has never said anything that I haven't agreed with. He's been a great advocate of stuff that I believe in. So on the positions, he seems to be correct.
Uh-oh, James, you said Oren McIntyre is pretty much the epitome of what you're talking about, and this guy has had him on the show many times and agreed with everything he said. So of course James is going to go into a long diatribe. We're going to fast forward through it and see if the host is gleaning anything from James Lindsay's word salad.
So let's talk about that. In other words, what is it when you talk
start with the
woke right?
left.
What does that mean? What are these principles of what you're calling wokeism that you've seen on both sides? What are the principles?
Yeah, let's start with the left.
So this is at 200% speed. Okay, I'm going to show you. Now we're at 400% speed. Just trying to get through this. Now we're at 1,000% speed. This is how long this takes and how long it goes on for. Now we're at 2,000% speed, and let's see what he gained from it.
Which we all recognize as a woke theory on the left.
Okay, and let me
Sure.
say, just interrupt to clarify or annotate. So that makes sense on the left. So keep
So
going.
there's a name for that. Willfully cannot see it and is therefore complicit in the continuance of that
Okay,
oppression.
And ladies and gentlemen, if this sounds demonically confusing, that's because it is.
Who's making it demonically confusing? Who's using more words than the entire Constitution which built the country to describe the woke right? You bring up Oren McIntyre, which you've had on the show, and James says that's like the epitome of the woke right. He's like, I've talked to him, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, well, it's super sneaky, like the devil, which I'm creating, and let me explain it to you with thousands more words that aren't making sense still, so let's keep going.
But okay, so keep going. We've just got 60 seconds. Can you say quickly how the right partakes of this as well?
Exactly the same way.
Okay, so I'm trying to pull out like the principles of what you just said.
Well, there's a variety of ways, but first let me distinguish in authoritarians that these people have been systematically excluded by literally what they refer to as liberals and neocons, who they see as two sides of the same coin. There's this false politics.
Now, hang on a second. So, because I want clarity here. So that is a little bit helpful, but when you talk about this,
hold on, I'll break in real quick for clarity. The Stalin or the Marxists, demonic critical consciousness logic.
Okay, now I'm going to challenge you again to give me names.
Well, Tucker Carlson, he's a household name. He's partaken of this.
Who has been attacking you? Give us some other names, because I'd just love to get some sense of what we're talking about.
Social media, many of whom are just kind of anonymous with weird fake names, like It's Homath. That would be one account that goes after me rather a lot. He's a Ken Wilber integralist, and which is not a Catholic integralist. It is a hermetic wizardry thing, and it's a total cult.
But I mean, most people like me would just dismiss this as fringe. And why are you even reacting to it? Why do you care what these lunatics say on the internet? I mean,
because they control elite MAGA. They control elite MAGA.
Okay. James Lindsay is not going crazy. He just thinks that the X account, It's Homath, is a part of a hermetic wizard cult that runs elite MAGA. Does that sound kind of crazy to anybody? Like, where does that rank on the conspiracy scale? And as an interviewer, you had to sit there and go, interesting. Okay. So how does this relate to how Oren McIntyre? Like, this guy set it up perfectly. In the very beginning, he said to James, I know Oren McIntyre. He's been on the show for like 3 years now, and I've agreed with pretty much everything he said. So now, when James is explaining all of these behaviors, he's thinking, how is Oren McIntyre any of this? And James never explains how Oren McIntyre is like anything he's saying. He's off onto the next thing, which is why he rambles, and this guy is like the only person that's holding James Lindsay accountable in the conversation. He's like, yeah, but like, who the hell are you talking about? So like, some guy online was like making fun of you and it hurt your feelings because he's ratioing the fuck out of you? It's Homath has been putting James Lindsay through the ringer for days. But James is so insecure, he can't just say, I'm unbelievably insecure and this larger account has been prolapsing me online. So I keep responding because I'm really insecure and I can't help myself. He's like, he's controlling elite MAGA. Yeah, dude, I'm sure it's white supremacy. Yeah, I'm sure he's pulling the strings of elite MAGA. Not conspiratorial at all whatsoever. Sounds very sane. But let's start to end it here. Let's check in on Jordan Peterson and see if he's having a normal one. There was a Jubilee episode called One Christian versus 20 Atheists, originally, allegedly, and they changed it to Jordan Peterson versus 20 Atheists. Let's see how Jordan Peterson is doing since defending James Lindsay to his death.
Go to a Catholic church, don't you? Or you've attended recently. You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure.
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
Somewhat.
Okay, you're
Their
familiar.
doctrines are very
how do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either you're a
'cause
Christian
I won't
or you're
talk
not.
to you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell you.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression
private.
I was invited to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video.
You're really quite something, you are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing. Right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
Hey, with political friends like that, who needs enemies? Thanks a lot, Jordan Peterson. Thanks for making me agree with that guy. I really appreciate that. You're really helping me out in these political battles that we have in terms of culture and the internet and what people see. I don't want to talk to anyone on the left about that. I'm hiding. I do not want to discuss what I just saw. But you know, I'm clipping him out of context. It's not like Jordan Peterson was being overtly postmodern and dodgy in this conversation. About God, about the simplest, most rudimentary, first-order discussions about God.
What do you mean by believe?
You think it to be true?
That's the circular definition. What do you mean
How
when
is
you
that
say you
circular?
believe?
How is that circular?
Because you added no content to the answer by substituting the word true and believe.
I said you think it to be true.
All right. So if
What's
you
a
believe
belief?
something, you stake your life on it.
What do you mean by that?
You live for it and you die for it.
Okay, so you're saying that you don't believe something if you wouldn't die for it? I'll give you an example. If you're like in like Nazi Germany, and it is the case that there's like Jewish people in your attic and you're trying
I
to
know
protect
the
them,
example.
would you lie to like the Nazis? If
I
they're
would have done
asking?
everything I bloody well could so I wouldn't be in that situation
you
to
lie?
begin with. It's a hypothetical and it's
You
not
can't answer
answerable.
hypotheticals?
No, I can't answer a hypothetical like
What?
that because
Did
it's
you eat
far.
today? Did you eat
Don't
today?
play games.
I'm not playing a game. I'm just
Yes,
asking if
you
you
are.
ate it.
I just told you
Hypothetical?
I would do everything that I could to make sure that I'm never in that situation. By the time you've got there, you've made so many mistakes that there's nothing you can do that isn't a sin.
Yeah, you were hiding Jews because you're a sinner. What is going on? Oh, whatever I am politically, it's to the right of Jordan Peterson and to the right of James Lindsay, and from what it looks like, we are going as far right as humanly possible. Have a good one.